Perform the indicated operation by hand. Then use your calculator to check your work. So as we look at these fraction problems that we're going to be doing here, first thing we want to do is we want to see, well, what kind of operations are we doing? So we can see in this first problem, we see the minus sign there, and so we know that we're going to be doing a subtraction. And in the second one, we see the addition sign. So we need to be thinking about adding and subtracting fractions. The thing we want to pay attention to here is that we have a negative sign in kind of a funny place with a couple of these fractions. We have a negative just living down in the denominator. And when I'm working operations with fractions, I typically don't want to have a negative sitting just in the denominator or just in the numerator. I like to have my negative out in front of the fraction. So something that we want to be aware of is that when I'm working with a fraction, and remember fractions are ways of thinking about division, if I had 12 divided by negative 3, if I had something like that, we would say, well, positive divided by a negative is a negative, and we know that 12 divided by 3 is 4. Now notice if I move the negative up to the top, up to the numerator, negative 12 divided by 3 would also equal negative 4. And if I were to take that negative out front and then just write the 12 over 3, the opposite, the negative of 12 over 3, well, 12 over 3, 12 divided by 3 is 4, and that negative sign would just say I want the opposite of 4, which is negative 4. So notice all three of these have the same answer, so it doesn't matter where the negative is, if the negative is in the denominator or in the numerator or out front. So each one of these problems that we have here, we could, let me just erase my marks here, we could go ahead and rewrite each one of these problems with this negative that's in the denominator. Let's move it out front. So here I can rewrite this as 2/5 minus a negative 1/5. And now I'm back on familiar ground. I know when I subtract a negative number, that's the same as adding the opposite. The opposite of a negative is a positive, so this is the same thing as 2/5. Remember we said that subtraction becomes addition, and the opposite of negative 1/5 is positive 1/5, so 2/5 plus 1/5 would just give us 3/5. Now we're going to do the same thing with this problem down here. We're going to move the negative out front, negative 5/4 plus 5/6. Well, with this problem, we're going to need to find a common denominator, right? So when we look at our two denominators, we've got the 4 and the 6, so the LCD is going to be 12. So for the first one, negative 5/4, well, to build that to that common denominator of 12, we're going to have to multiply that by 3 over 3. And then to that we're going to add 5/6, but we have to build it to a common denominator as well, and because the 6 would have to get multiplied by 2, we're going to multiply this by 2 over 2. Okay? So that's going to give us some changed fractions now. They're going to have the same denominator, negative 15/12 plus 10/12. And now that we have the common denominator, we know that the denominator stays the same. There's the 12. And negative 15 plus 10, well, since the signs are different, we take their difference, which is 5. And the sign of the one with the larger absolute value is the negative 15. So my final answer will be negative 15 over 12. We can do a quick check on our calculator here. And so let's take a look at that. So we have 2/5, 2 fraction key 5, and then we subtract, and remember it's a negative 1 fraction key 5, and there's our 3/5, and the other one, negative 5 fraction key 4 plus 5 fraction key 6, and that gives us our negative 5/12 we were looking for.